I was going to ask, and you kind of answered it, but I'm kind of curious your thoughts of like, whose principles are these? When you're talking about principle-based leadership, there is the 10 W's, but there's also people may go, well, they're my principles and I'm imposing them on my team or my organization.
Mm-hmm.
Or are they pulling it from the organization themselves? Or are they just using the 10 W's as a framework going, you know what, I'm going to start with these 10 and I'll figure it out.
So I'll give you the way I approach this. So when I created the principles, I shared them the next morning. And I was really direct with the team. I don't care if you embrace all 10, you want to add 2, but these are the 10. They don't have to be the 10 W's. They can be, you could dream them up anytime, any place. I would encourage a lot of self-reflection when we come up with these principles. But my goal in spreading the message of principle-based leadership, more specifically the 10 W's, is not isolated to just those 10. It's what I've chosen. They work for me.
Right.
But everybody's different. Everybody's leadership style is different. My urging is to just create and document your principles and share them widely and be really overt in setting expectations about them and with them. So it can be, they don't have to be the we's, they don't have to be 10, but they have to be established is my position.
How is this different than, say, a values-based leadership or service-based leadership? Because I could Google leadership styles and get 173 of them tomorrow.
Yeah.
So how is this differentiating itself, or is it just foundational to other styles?
I think principle-based leadership or principles in general augment and enable the value.
Okay.
So in a lot of organizations, the values or sometimes even the mission statements are kind of like these aspirational sentences or groups of, or set of words that communicate who we are and what we do externally. The principles in my mind enable that enable the delivery of those values. So for example, my favorite example, actually, there's a firm that I used to work with whose mission statement was helping consumers on their paths to better health. Who's gonna disagree with that? It's beautiful, but it doesn't compel me to work any harder, any more collaboratively. It doesn't place an emphasis on excellence. So what I have found, and I've had organizations and very senior people say, well, we can't have the we's replace our values, and that's not the intention. Right. They enable. So the principles are much more action-based oriented. They are actionable. They are quantifiable in many ways. So they add a finer point and provide a little more direction and guidance than, say, just a value or mission statement.
I love vision and missions. I think they're completely vital to any organization. I think most organizations are horrible at them, but I still believe that they're so integral to the forward movement and can be inspiring if done well, if communicated well, if connected to do you see the principle-based leadership or the principles sort of that connective tissue? Because it's not like these can go away. And that's why I always get bothered when teams will go, well, we have our own vision. I'm like, but there is a vision already. Like, I get that you need your own motivation because it's very personal to you and what motivates you. And I get that, but you can't work in a vacuum either. You have to be part of the larger organization fixing the larger problems. Is that sort of the connective tissue piece that we're looking at?
It should be. It should be. Fair. Yeah. And it's your comment and question is really, really a good one because as I mentioned, and I'll go a little bit deeper, is I've worked with firms that they hold their mission statement so close and with so much affection. However, if you ask the masses of the people inside the organization, most of them can't recite it. They can't even recite a few words of it unless they're walking by the wall on which it is displayed. And when I get that kind of pushback, it's like, I am not here to test or criticize or scrutinize your mission statement. I'm here to help drive the enabling of that mission. And I've had people kind of give me the Heisman to say, we're not going deeper with these principles. We love to talk. We love the principle-based leadership. However, they threaten our values, which I think is us being married to kind of leadership tactics or approaches of the past. I think you and I might disagree a bit. I think mission statements are wonderful tools for explaining who we are externally. But again, behind the curtains, I don't think they do anything to motivate.
Fair. I can't help but see the we of it all. And as you were talking, when you came with your epiphany in the middle of the night, which is always the time, these Jerry Maguire moments always seem to happen that way. For those that are the Gen Z, Jerry Maguire was a movie with Tom Cruise that you should definitely check out. So needless to say, me as a Gen Xer, I will say I see the weeness of it all, but that makes me go back to what problem were you trying to fix when you came up with these principles? You talk about your own personal journey with apathy, but I immediately think of the me culture that may have been, and maybe I'm just jumping to that conclusion because we seems like a fix to a me culture. Am I wrong?
You're not wrong. You're not wrong. That it wasn't the intention though. So when I stepped into this role, and I'd been in the position maybe 60 days before creating the principles. And what I observed that I think compelled me, there were two driving factors that compelled me to document these principles. By the way, the night before, I'm in that hotel room, had no idea what I was going to say. I was a bit terrified because I knew this was a kind of a gut check transitional moment for me. I had no idea it would take me to the places it's taken me since then. There was no muse on my shoulder. I sensed the first factor. I sensed a fair amount of siloed paradigms. So this is a 15,000 person organization. I had 7 directs. Each of them had at a minimum a few hundred employees.
Wow.
And they viewed, and I love this group, so it's hard to be critical this many years later. This is back in 2017. They viewed their success almost exclusively by the performance of the group that they led, not more kind of programmatic macro level success. So there's some silos and a bit of sandboxes were needed to kind of traverse. So that was probably the number one factor. And the second was, and you know this better than I do, probably, Russell, is most organizations do a fair job, if not a really good job, bringing new employees into the fold, telling them how to do their job, the SOPs, the nuts and bolts, the X's and O's of the role that they have assumed. I think by and large, most companies do an okay job at that, if not better than okay. Where nearly every organization falls short is establishing similar expectations for the behavior. So the how, we know what we do, we train for that, but how we get there is an entirely different conversation. So my goal was to establish guardrails, and they could serve as any type of defense for adversity that we're facing, for tough decisions that we have to make, essentially for every day, every interaction. So those were the two driving factors. Now, I'd be dishonest if I said it was met with a rousing response and people were on board. I would say half the group was, a quarter of the group was skeptical but optimistic, and then there was a quarter of the group, classic Bell, that they were obstinate. They just thought I was full of it because they'd seen guys like me come and go. And so I wanted to really focus on setting those expectations. And I led with those expectations of, if you see me behave any way contrary to any one of these principles, I literally said, grab me by the ear. Nobody did, but I said that. I said, just because, know this, I will hold you accountable, just as accountable, no leadership gap, to these same expectations. And I think leveling the playing field right out of the gate had an impact bigger than I'd probably understood at the time.
I want to talk about accountability in a minute because that's a huge blind spot, I think, in a lot of organizations. But first, I want to dial back a bit and go, as a leader, how do I know, is there any canary in a coal mine? Is there any beige flags that we need to be looking for to go, you know what, this shift is necessary within my organization, where maybe we're not going in the healthiest culture, or we're focusing way more on the ends justify the means as opposed to the journey to get there.
Yeah.
How do we know?
Well, the most straightforward and simple way is you just have to ask. I'm not naive in thinking that everyone's going to be as open and share, exactly what they're thinking, especially to a brand new leader. But asking questions, really open-ended questions, and not just listening, but hearing the responses and taking them to heart, taking them with a grain of salt in some cases, depending on the size of the organization, right? I'm a big fan of engagement surveys. I'm a big fan of anonymous feedback engines or loops, whatever that is. My bigger point is, or whatever technology works for you or approach. My bigger point, though, is if you're going to ask those questions, you must be prepared to take action on what you hear. Even if that action is, hey, I hear you, not a bad idea. Maybe it is a bad idea, but now's not the time. We're going to put this over here in a corner and check in with me, or I'll check in with you. And, let's set 30, 60, 90 days or whatever. It's a great idea. And we're going to put it in the queue, but we just can't take action. And here's the why. Why are we not doing something? Or why are we doing something? So I think I'm a big fan of skip level meetings as well. So I just believe in, almost sometimes dangerous transparency, unless it's something confidential I can't share. I just believe in asking questions, asking the awkward questions, and being open to hearing them. What do you think? How do you assess it?
I think curiosity is So I think, first off, so I always talk, if you want great leadership, you need three things: self-awareness, situational awareness, and great communication. You need to know yourself, know your team and organization, and know how to connect with them. And that's where the communication comes into it. So I think if you have a deeper understanding of those three things, you will know your organization well enough to know what it needs.
Yeah.
If it is vacant of values, if it is, to your point, mission and visions are posters on walls and websites, and there's a disconnect between the words said and the actions taken, then those actions need to be better aligned. Much like your wheeze is, okay, well, we need to close that gap, because that gap is where trust between employees and leadership is lost, because the bigger that gap is, the more employees aren't stupid. They see what you say and what you don't do. So to have a blueprint, or at least, to your point, inspiration to go, no, we need to show our leadership, not just say we're leaders.
Right.
Which is what I think this is what these principles do for me. But not everybody's from the same song sheet, Kyle. Like, I'm looking at these principles. We lead by example. We say what we're going to do, then we do it. We take action. We admit mistakes. Love them. However, leadership is not in a great place. Leadership is not trained. Leadership is a bunch of people that applied for jobs just to get more money, not because they were qualified, because they just want to move up the ladder, and people just want bum and seats. So we perpetuate this underqualification in leadership roles.
Yep.
So to embrace something like this principle-based, these principles, where does a leader need to be? How do they qualify to be ready to put these principles into place? Where's their mindset need to be?
Man, there's a lot to unpack there. Yeah, right. No, it's a really great question and framed so well. I want to push back on one component of the question, though.
Sure.
There's nobody named leadership. You know what I mean? I could not agree more with you. There's this cycle that happens. Let's pretend you and I are on the same team. Our boss just got a promotion. That role is now open. And I think, man, I want to make some more money. I want to tell people what to do. I want to be a leader. So I throw my hand up. Well, our former boss is now the fella or woman in charge of hiring into the role that they just left because they got promoted. We've loathed the approach that this man, you and I, we have loathed the approach, the way this person treats us, how they behave, how they prioritize their communication. We're inclined to mirror that behavior. We want to endear ourselves, right? This is the perpetuation you talk about. So I couldn't respond with a disagreement without telling you how much I completely agree with this thing. And until somebody steps up inside of a team, inside of an organization, inside the world to say this is no longer how we do things, it's a new day. As you said, leadership is in I think you said dark place or a bad place. Couldn't agree more. So how do you know you're ready to make that transition? I'll go back to what you said, man. It is probably the most important aspect of an impactful leader. I mean, we could argue about a couple of other kind of approaches, empathy, communication is important. Self-reflection. Yeah. That's where it's at, dude. Self-reflection. Am I comfortable in the shoes that I wear? Am I okay sharing the things that I'm not good at? Being transparent about my blind spots? Because as you said, dude, it's so true. The blind spots I'm trying to hide from my team, they could describe them intimately. They know those blind spots that they know what I'm not good at already. So hiding them creates this lack of relatability and inauthenticity, and then it's impossible to establish trust. So if you're questioning if you're ready for it or not, we have to first understand where we sit individually on this spectrum. And the spectrum is, I would say on one end of the spectrum is everything's about me. I only care about me, my raise, my promotion. It's all about me. The other end of the spectrum is completely selfless and focused on, those around you. I think most people sit in the middle, if not towards the left side of that spectrum. So having that self-reflection or that moment, I call it the mirror of truth. And it's a metaphor just for saying either a confidant that I can really rely on to tell me the stuff that I may not want to hear, or have I evolved enough where I can do it quietly in a place where I'm not going to be interrupted? It's not meditation. It's not just kind of like staring at my navel. It's thinking through things. And that's the process I went through when I created the principles. It's like, what have I disliked the previous 2 decades? Where do I want to go? And what impact do I want to have? What leadership legacy do I want to establish? It's 2 words a lot of people don't use together, leadership and legacy. So once you reach a point where the self-reflection is something that you're comfortable with, and I have to tip a cap to I'm such a fanboy of a guy named Harry Kramer. He's the former CEO of Baxter International. He's a professor at Kellogg School of Management now. He wrote a book called From Values to Action, and he has 4 values that he opines on. And I think it might be the first, but regardless, it's true self-confidence, and self-reflection is another one. So if I can have the self-reflection and really be comfortable in the things that I'm good at, not be an asshole or arrogant about it, but just, check the tape. These are things that I'm pretty good at, and augment those things that I'm not so good at with a really great team around me. That's the recipe for success. If you have that moment of self-reflection, or multiple moments, because it's an ongoing process of self-reflection, and you recognize that there might be a better way that provides more fulfillment and greater impact than you are having at the moment. So how do I get there? And it's a mistake to read a book, to go to a seminar, to watch a podcast, to come back in the next day and say, here's who we are. I'm going to lead differently today, because it's not a light switch decision. Right. What I have done, and what I encourage those that I work with today, is establish the principles. 10 W's, great. If not, don't care, but establish what they are and share them widely, set the expectation, and then back away and live it every single day. Not just every day, every interaction, because they're watching, as you said, Russell, they're watching to see if your actions and your words align. So long story short, do the self-reflection, find the gaps of where you are and what you want to be and the impact you want to have, and create the expectations that will essentially be the bridge between those two places. And don't walk away from them. Be open to pushback, be open to maybe someone saying that's not the right list of principles. And then we talk about it and we communicate and come back and forth, and we land on what's perfect for us. That's the approach I would recommend.